bookshop. It's the bookshop. It's the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It is Sam Feifel, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, writing, literature, bookstores, and sitting on docks in the sunny afternoon at the glorious, healing waters of Clearwater Pond. I am here, as always, with my co-host and the co-owner of the bookshop of Beverly Farms, Hannah Harlow. How are you doing today, Hannah?
It's great. Lovely to be sitting right next to you.
That's right.
Here at Clearwater Pond.
That's right. It is the official, in Maine anyway, start of summer here on Memorial Day weekend. We had 2 lovely days of sun. Now it is raining. The perfect opportunity to talk about the books that we have been reading here lakeside.
I would say also the official start of summer reading, whatever that may mean to you.
Exactly right. Beach reads, whiling away the hours, killing time, because as we all know, we take the summers off. We do not work. We try to work as little as possible in general, but certainly in the summer, we try to work as little as possible.
The least amount possible.
We hope that you are not working. On our agenda today, I have 2 books, one of which I've finished here up in Industry, Maine, one of which I am about half done with. The first is Monica Wood's new book. Monica is a Mainer, and she has written How to Read a Book. It is a big seller, I would say, with a nice fat quote from Lilly King on the front. And then the other is about the polar opposite of that. It is an obscure text from 1939 set in Savannah called The Damned Don't Cry by pulp novelist Harry Hervey, who died back in like 1950. Probably never heard of him. What is on your agenda?
My agenda, I have 3 books on my agenda, let's say.
Wow.
I could do a 4th, but we don't want to be here all night.
No. 3.
So I have Pink Whales by Sarah Shukla, The Search Party by Hannah Rochelle, and The Stolen Child by Anne Hood.
Oh, wow. Okay, why don't we start with The Stolen Child, as
Great.
I know some small amount about it, because Anne was at the Newburyport Literary Festival while I was selling books. And the unifying principle of their very erudite talk was authors from Rhode Island, because clearly they have an affinity. So what does this Rhode Island author have to offer us, Stolen Child?
So Anne Hood has written many books. I've seen her speak a couple of times, but this is the first book I've actually read of her. There is a Rhode Island setting for part of the book. There are kind of 2 main characters, one of which is a young woman whose life sort of been derailed, right? It's in the early 70s, and she was going to get out of, her Rhode Island town. She went to the state university, but only made it 1 semester before she got pregnant, drop out.
University of Rhode Island.
University of Rhode Island.
Okay.
So she is in Rhode Island, but she dreams of traveling abroad. She's obsessed with Italy.
Well, there's lots of Italians in Rhode Island.
Sure. And she finds an opportunity.
Is she Italian? Does she live on like Mission Hill?
Not Italian.
She doesn't have an Italian last name or anything.
Her last name now. But anyway, the other main character is this dude who's also from Rhode Island, who fought in World War I and kind of made a mistake that has haunted him his entire life.
We're in the 70s, so he's 5 years old.
Yes. And not really a spoiler alert, but you find out pretty early on that he is dying. And he really wants to resolve the mistake he has made. So he needs to travel back to France, where he was in the war, to find. So basically, like, he misplaced it. Is
misplaced.
The easiest way to say it.
Yeah.
So that's what has become known as the stolen child.
Gotcha.
And so he wants to go find out what happened. Child who would now be, in his 60s. Yeah. And since he's pretty sick, he kind of he puts out a notice in the paper that he needs, like, you know, kind of a secretary to travel with, whatever.
Uh-huh.
So this young woman applies, and the two head to France and then end up going to Italy looking for stolen child, who is a man in his.
Well, that does sound like a ridiculous setup. But
But I will say it's quite charming. The book was really good. I found myself like thinking about these characters when I wasn't reading and kind of wanting to go back and see what happened. And like they end up, of course, with this, like, you know, the grumpy old man and the like beautiful, charming young woman.
Develop a deep and abiding friendship, you know.
Yes, they you know, come to really appreciate each other. There are some love interests, a couple different ones for the young woman. So you're kind of like, who's she going to end up with?
Yeah, and he can be like a fatherly figure for her. Does she not have a fatherly figure in her life?
She does not.
Wow, what a coincidence. It's a good thing that she found this 80-plus-year-old guy who was looking for a secretary to take to France, I would say.
Totally. But she learns, you know, how capable she is and that she can do, you know, yes, her life got derailed by this pregnancy, but she can, you know, bounce back.
Yeah, very interesting because it parallels quite tightly, actually, this Damn Don't Cry book.
Really? I thought you were not going to.
No, it's
Okay.
so this story is pitched. So I think I mentioned it obliquely in the last podcast that we did this book tour of Savannah.
Yes.
When we were there. So one of the bookshops that we went to is like a select used bookstore in that they specialize in like old children's books. So they had like a ton of like first edition Nancy Drews and, you know, Boxcar Children and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they also have like a lot of the original artwork for those kind of books, you know, like you'd see like the paintings that served as the covers of like, especially like Pulp Fiction, that kind of thing. And so, but also it's in Savannah. And so they have like lots of, you know, the heroes of Savannah literature in there, one of whom is this guy, Harry Hervey. And so this is a reprint that must have been done. So it's like some like, Cherokee Publishing Company in Atlanta, Georgia. They just reprinted this book that came out in 1939. It was originally published by the Greystone Press of New York. And the way it's printed, I would hazard to believe they found the original files and they just smashed it into the book because it's like, see how it's printed in the middle and there's extra at the top? I think they just put it on a bigger piece of paper so then they could put their own publishing below it.
Yeah, they just didn't reset it.
Yeah, and I suspect that this was all relatively illegally done. I doubt anybody got any money. I don't know. But so like, you know, the cover is like kind of low res and, you know.
I thought it was self-published.
Yeah, it looks self-published, right? But it's because they wanted to bring it back into print because it's known as the first scandalous novel of Savannah.
Hey.
Because it's all about this girl, Zelda, who is growing up dirt poor. Zelda O'Brien is her name. Apparently and actually if you go there, you can see it. There's a huge like Irish influence in Savannah, which I didn't know until I was there. We stayed in a like Irish themed hotel when we were down there. It had an Irish flag on it. There's a huge Irish immigration there at some point, and they served as the working poor in Savannah for a long time in what was known as the Old Fort neighborhood. And so this novel follows Zelda from basically birth through, I'm assuming she dies at the end. I don't know. It's like Zelda's story or whatever. And you will not be surprised that she gets knocked up right before high school graduation. Oh. And I am currently in the part where she's dealing with the fact that she has a secret baby that she is hiding from her family somehow.
Wow.
Thanks to her wily ways of ingratiating herself with what is known as the aristocrats, is what her poor mom calls these people who are like the landed gentry. She meets and ingratiates herself with this like rich shipping magnate and ends up being like his personal secretary at the.
Oh, more personal.
That's what I'm saying. No, it's very similar. Personal secretary, and then she befriends the guy's daughter, and the daughter takes her out to be her secretary at the plantation that they own on the little green islands outside on Georgia's coast. And this book is amazing. It's incredibly like rich and textured. It's got like a Southern Gothic feel going on. But so the reason it's scandalous is because it's very gritty, right? So it's all about, this woman has been sexually assaulted multiple times, including by her brother. Everybody is constantly like smoking and, having illicit sex, and, they're drunkards, and they're like, her father dies drunk and her brother is constantly drunk. And, it's like this, what I assume is pretty realistic portrait of what it was like growing up poor in Savannah and trying to like escape poverty. And so it's kind of like your basic rags to riches story, that I think was very popular in the late 1930s when we're in the middle of the Depression. Like, look at this, smart, industrious girl raises herself out of poverty through her wits and her wiles. And, I'm assuming everything's going to wind up happy at the end, although the damn don't cry makes me think that maybe she doesn't escape. I don't know.
I'm not sure it's going to have a happy ending.
Yeah, I might not.
How far are you in?
I'm about halfway through. But he's a hell of a writer, like super engaging writing. There's all kinds of like Savannah patois. Plus, it's not politically correct. So lots of N-words, but also just like whatever the racial slur is for all of the races comes up at some point, whether Italian, Irish, Hispanic, like there are many, many inappropriate words, but it feels like very real in a way that, like these books that we read today, I feel like they're often, even when they're meant to be sort of gritty, they're often sort of sanitized, right? In a way that we're never going to see anything that truly offends us because, everybody's sort of PC. And when we are shown someone being like inappropriate, it's always very obvious, like, oh, this is the bad person, know?
Yeah.
And I just really like, so and there's also, he uses a really weird like perspective shifting in that Zelda is always the main character, but sometimes like in the middle of scenes, it'll sort of shift like imperceptibly to like, now we're kind of looking over this other character in the scene's shoulder and we get a little bit of their perspective and then it shifts back to Zelda. So it's an omniscient narrator, but like, the omniscient narrator sort of just like was always rooting for Zelda sort of.
Okay.
I like it, I mean, I like Pulp Fiction in general, I like all of the old Edgar Rice Burroughs books so much. And so it has this like sort of pulp populist vibe to it. And I get like it was meant to be like racy and exciting at the time.
Right.
But I don't know. And maybe it's also me like projecting nostalgia into the past, but everything just seems like very real. The experience seems very real. This woman's, and also in 1939 for a dude to be writing from this like very feminist, like sympathetic position about how screwed this woman is it's always like, and because she's a woman, she just has to deal with like being touched all the time by skeevy dudes. And, like it's a very feminist novel for a random dude from 1939.
Right. I was immediately suspect when like, oh, this guy's writing about this, woman who gets knocked up and blah, blah, blah.
Right. No, but it's not, she,
What does he know about it?
That's exactly what my expectation was going to be. But like the mother is Katie, Zelda's mother is very, kind of, guess stereotypically mean-spirited and harpish towards her kids and, kind of bitter and resentful. She's been left with these two kids and dead husband, has no money and has no ways of making money. And, but like, and so like Zelda comes in on her, like banging like the grocer or whatever. And like the implication is that she's basically banging this dude for food,
right.
And it's like, and it's super like real, you know, like we're sympathetic and Zelda doesn't understand it, but like it's not like, look at this harlot. It's like, look at the sacrifices these fucking poor women had to make to exist back in the 1920s or whatever, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I do think you're seeing that also in response to other books that are for contemporary, what we call quote unquote women's fiction, which is a terrible name. But I do think a lot of these books, in the last pod, like Lessons in Chemistry, a book like Remarkably Bright Creatures. I think you're going to say something about this. Monica Wood book.
Maybe so.
I could maybe have said something like this for The Stolen Child and maybe Whales. That there's like a certain level of like, we know this is fiction. We're going to gloss over some of the things that might ground this in reality.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
All in the name of like a good story or the, you know, things can wrap up nicely. Yes. Or whatever. Exactly. That they are a little bit like.
They're cartoonish, right? Like yes. There's always like a glow around the edges and there's always like this hand waving that we're all sort of in agreement on. Like, yes, there are a bunch of details here that probably should be explained, but we don't care because that will just slow down the narrative or whatever. Yes. And that's what actually I love about this book is there are all sorts of scenes that happen like really slowly. Like there was this excellent scene where she's going on a picnic with this private that she's just met from the, you know, local army base or whatever. And, you know, nobody's ever been nice to her before. And he takes her on a sailboat out to this island. And there's just like all of this like scene setting and what it's like to be on this boat and being nervous about being on a sailboat with this sketchy guy. And is he sketchy or does she really like him? And just the descriptions of the bougainvillea and all this sort of stuff. And it was just like, it was really nice not to feel like I'm being paced all the time, you know, like the pacing is definitely not something this dude worries about. It's about, you know, like lots of scene setting and reality and making sure you can touch and feel everything. And I really appreciate it. So many of these books are just so breezy now. Like, oh, here we go. You know, it's like this, like it took its time, but also it's not boring. I don't know.
Right.
It's very well done.
So my next book is a pace book. It's The Search Party by Hannah Rochelle. And I feel like there are many books like this, right? That the publishers are just cranking out these books. You know, if you loved like The Guest List by Lucy Foley, this is a book that falls in that category. So some of these books that like Lucy Foley's book, these huge successes.
Yes.
And so, you know, I think chasing, and they are books crush. Right. So people are going to read a ton of them.
They're like Netflix series of books.
Yes. And so the Search Party kind of falls in that category. It's set in England and it's a story you're going to be like, oh yeah, there are a bunch of books like, college friends 20 years after graduation are getting together for a weekend.
Oh my God, somebody's dead. Who's dead?
And there's a big storm and they've been cut off. So it's like a closed room mystery. But, you know, someone ends up dead.
They've been cut off is so ridiculous. I know. I'm sorry. We just can't reach the outside world.
So, I mean, in this case, one couple of the friend group, they've like left the rat race in London, partly because they've adopted this child as like an older child who, you know, is kind of troubled by how he was raised. And kind of social issues. And so they're like, let's move to the country and set up a glamping company.
So they invite their college friends out to come glamp at their glamping.
To test it out before it opens. And, oh my gosh, we haven't gotten the internet set up yet. So there's no Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi.
Your phones don't work.
There's no cell towers. Never. Yeah.
And then there's a storm that, like, yes, you could drive up to the farmhouse, but the storm now has knocked out power. So, and the power line has fallen across the road, so you can't drive to get help. Truly stuck on this little peninsula. And
it's a bad time to get murdered.
Yeah. So someone has died, but you also have another missing child.
Uh-oh.
And so you don't know for a long time.
There's some book that's just like that.
So you're you're going back and forth in time from the beginning of the weekend to the end of the weekend.
Oh.
So you have like the police questioning everybody interspersed with like flashbacks to the weekend. And I actually really like how she set it up, because as the police question and the police are like, okay, let's just go through the whole weekend.
Right.
You kind of go, okay, well, like,
so you get the story that's
Yeah.
being told and then what really happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of different storylines that kind of are confusing, like who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who's dead, who's just missing. Basically, the kids kind of wander off, play, and not all of them come back. So the search party is all night during the storm on Saturday night. Everybody's out looking. Kid. By the end, Sunday morning, someone is. Yeah. But I found it entertaining. Like, I just thought it was like a solid entry into these kind of thriller.
Yeah, it's like, something to read over the weekend. Yeah, not trying to move the literary canon forward.
Exactly.
That's fine.
But it was entertaining, and I didn't know what had happened until the very end. Like, it kept me guessing.
Right. Well, I think, that has value alone, right? Like, there's satisfying payoff when you find what happened, right?
Yep.
No, that sounds good. So I think that is one of the things that I was really not satisfied by with this Monica Wood book, which I'm not going to slander. Like, Monica does what she does really well. It's not, she's a good writer, easy to read. I don't stumble. I finished the book quickly, right? So, but one of my problems with the book for me personally, and what I am satisfied by, is I felt as though I could write the entire book within like 50 pages. I knew exactly how it was going to go. I was not surprised in any way. And to the point where, but while like when we were getting to the end of it, I was like, all right, well, this has to wrap up in this way. I've only got like 30 pages left. Like, when's it going to happen?
Right.
Why hasn't it happened yet? Like, there's not enough time here for the close. And then boom, it happened. And like the way that it happened was so like perfunctory, it just felt like box checking, like, and now comes this person in to play their role, everybody cries, boop, boop, all set, now let's move into the end piece, there's definitely pieces of it that felt, she says Monica's a very thoughtful person. It's a very Maine book. Like, people who are in Maine will recognize lots of Maine stuff. It's about fundamentally this young woman who's moving down from like the Rumford area to Portland with her boyfriend. They get boozed up, take some oxy as one does, and cross the center line. She's driving, forces a woman to drive off the road, hit a tree, and die. And so she goes to prison for 3 years. And the book picks up with a woman who leads a book group at the prison. This girl is in the book group. Then this girl gets out of prison. And then the book group leader meets her out of prison. And then there is the husband of the woman who died, who just, Maine is a small place. Actually, one of the things that's that's not actually, people might read this and think like, it's so ridiculous they would meet each other. But actually in Maine, you would definitely meet the person. Like, like, it's so small. If you're in the same city and you have the same interests, you will see each other. That's just the way it works. But so it becomes this little triumvirate, the woman who just got out of prison, and then the book group leader and the husband, and they are in their 60s, she's in her 20s, and this little, sort of, it sets up like all these moral conundrums, like, okay, what would you do if you just were working as a handyman in a store and the woman who killed your wife walked in,
Can you forgive her?
Can you forgive her? But then also, like, it introduces, I'm not going to ruin them, but it introduces some complications in like the dude and his dead wife's relationship and, whatever. Then the book club leader, she has a dead husband and, they had an interesting relationship. And So that, it's all like, it's all very cozy. It's all about kindness and the kindness everybody's showing to each other, and everybody at the bookstores, it's a bookstore book,
Right. So it's called How to Read a Book. We have
right.
the book group leader.
Yeah.
Who buys her books at the bookstore.
Right. And the dude is working as a handyman in the bookstore because he's retired from his like 30-year career as a machinist.
Where's our handy?
Huh? I know. We didn't. Well, that's what. So when you were talking about books being cartoonish, like this book is ridiculously cartoonish, right? Like it takes lots of very complicated real life situations and turns them into like these little set pieces.
Just simplifies.
It just simplifies, right? And also just like takes liberties to like, so like I have actually been a volunteer book group leader at the prison. I know how it works. It does not work the way it works in this book at all.
You can understand.
But it's fine because it's like, it just simplifies things and, it's so as a Mainer who has done this thing, who knows the exact bookstore that this is set in, right? Yes. Like the whole thing just is like, it's like watching a Disney version of your actual life. And so it's kind of disconcerting,
Yeah.
But I think, it's very cute. Mom likes it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the characters are like very likable, and, the old gruff machinist guy is charming.
Right. I mean, I think she excels at writing kind of feel good fiction, right? Of like, they're going to have happy endings.
Yes, there's a happy ending. Everybody learns a big life lesson. Yes,
exactly.
There's lots of like, and I feel terrible for saying these things, but it also sometimes feels like it's like checking boxes of the things that are wrong with literature, like, okay, everybody hates that women's bodies are always described in books, so Monica always describes the women's bodies, but they're always like soft and pillowy and, look at this beautiful overweight person, and it's like, okay, I get what we're doing here. And like, I am a prisoner rights advocate. Like, I don't believe in incarceration at all. And so I understand what she's doing, but like, she's like, humanizing all these prisoners, and aren't they all just women just like us? And like we should feel empathy for them, and like, yes, great, but it just I need a story. I need to not know what's going to happen. I need to not know exactly how it's going to finish up, and it did not scratch those issues for me.
Great, that's fair. My last book is Pink Whales by Sarah Shukla, who will be joining us.
What a great transition into the event that we'll be holding.
June 23rd. It's a Sunday, 2 p.m. It is the last event in our literary salon series.
True.
We're going to have 4 authors there. Sarah is one of them. So this is the first book I have read of those 4 authors that are joining us. I will be moderating the discussion, which is about like summer reading and how do we define summer reading, and what is it, and why do you think your book's a summer read?
How do you create a book that's great for summer reading?
Right. So Pink Whales is set over the course of a summer. So, that to me as like a summer read.
Yes. Kind of I think that's a cool little genre tradition. Like we are going to wrap this story between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And I love the like, things are starting with people like, getting outside the city and finishing with, oh no, we have to return to our real lives after this. Like, I like all of that about summer reading. I think that's a great genre piece.
Basically, that's what this is. A new family that's moved to the North Shore of Massachusetts, of Tony, sailboat town.
What?
Yes, I know. Can't believe it. So they're new. And kind of immediately the main character meets these women who are like, oh, you have to come hang out with us at the beach club.
Where we play tennis.
There is a tennis player. There's lots of hanging out in the cabanas. Yes. But basically you have the events at the club all summer of like, I think they actually miss 4th of July, but it's like, July through August. Where you're,
there's the big golf tournament and there's the sailing regatta.
Right. Yes. So there are lots of scenes at the beach club, on a sailboat, lots of partying.
Catty women, descriptions of clothing. Lots of descriptions of clothing. Yes, lots of drinking. Lots of which kind of cocktails are they imbibing.
Yes. And you don't know why these women have kind of welcomed her so quickly. Like you can kind of tell someone, well, at least one of them has an agenda with her, and you don't really
Right.
And she and her husband, the main character and her husband, are kind of having like a marital difficulty where they're just not communicating well.
Right,
So you know that they each have kind of some secrets they're not telling each other, and you don't really know what those are. So those come out over the course of the novel. But it's like the main character is like, describes herself as just, always making these like faux pas, just always spilling something or
Right.
like
Clumsy.
very clumsy. There's a lot of that kind of humor. And then so it's like
Anna Kendrick style.
Yeah, it's sort of it's like she's having not a quarter life or a midlife crisis, but she's having this kind of crisis that I felt familiar to me as like a parent of like your kids are suddenly old enough to like deal with themselves a little bit. And then you're like, well, who am I if I'm not just like taking care of them full time? Like
I have to have an actual personality beyond talking about my children.
Right. And I kind of gave up this artistic pursuit because I had these kids and got thrown into this, life.
I could have been a real dancer.
Right. Yeah. So she's kind of figuring out who she is over the course of the summer in this new place and, with these new women. Are they really her friends? Are they really going to, survive in this town and blah, blah, blah.
That woman over there is an alcoholic and this dude over here is cheating on his wife. And
there's a lot of good gossip in there. She's just going to these parties and women are getting trashed and going up to her and just like spilling all the secrets of the town.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other thing.
It's a fun, gossipy beach read.
I like it. And where and when can we learn more about these beach reads in this genre?
June 23rd.
Oh.
2 p.m. at Hastings House, because there are going to be so many people at this event, they're not going to fit in our store.
In Beverly Farms, Massachusetts, which definitely is not Tony, nor are there lots of sailboats.
I wouldn't know a thing about it.
We have various other events coming up. You should definitely check them out under the events tab at bookshopofbeverlyfarms.com. What other things do we have to pimp? We, just go there and do that.
There's a lot. I mean, there's like 4 events in June.
Yeah, we have all sorts
of more coming up in July.
I'm trying to lock down Jessica Anthony right now, who all of you should have heard of because she is a fantastic literary writer. She has a new book about. Do you remember the name of the new book?
No, but I know it's about a woman who walks into a swimming pool and won't get out.
Exactly, at like a motel.
Yes.
So that's what sort of Jessica specializes in is very strange setups. Last time there was about armadillo, a stuffed armadillo, I believe, was involved.
In like an election?
Yeah. A dude who was running for election, But anyway, we will have all sorts of very smart people to come and talk to you at the bookshop this summer. Do we have any? I don't know. That might be the rest. I think we'll get back out to this rainy day on the lake. We hope all of you had a wonderful and restful Memorial Day.